What's your craziest "I survived" story? When I was 5, we moved into a house where a massive oleander bush was growing over the fence. Oleander flowers littered the lawn. I played with them and then went inside, had something to eat, and played with my sisters for a bit. Next thing I remember, I'm in a doctor's office. I'm shivering and I ask for a blanket. The doctor puts a sheet of the paper that they use to cover the bed over me. They explain to my parents that I'm going to be fine and I can be taken home. When I was a bit older, 10 years, my mother told me that I had been telling her that my chest hurt and I couldn't breathe, and she grew concerned enough to take me to the ER. I had fallen asleep in the car and stayed asleep until waking up in the doc's office. I googled it and read that oleander is incredibly poisonous and works by paralyzing the respiratory system. Just one oleander flower can kill a horse. People have died from using oleander branches to roast food when camping. I had gotten pretty severely poisoned just by eating food with oleander residue on my hands. If I had bitten or eaten just a bit of the flower, which I very easily could have done since I was a dumbass that often ate random things, I would have died pretty quickly. So, yeah. I survived. I got to work before anyone else was there. I started eating a corn muffin and a huge chunk got caught in my throat. I couldn't breathe and was choking to death. I finally dislodged it by ramming my body against a chest height counter over and over again until it popped out. 1996, had just come out of a tunnel midnight Saturday night/Easter Sunday. 4 of us in a 1988-ish Honda Accord. I was riding shotgun and the girls in back were asleep. The driver did not know if she should take an off-ramp, so pulled off and put the car in park to check the map. Yes, hindsight not smart, but the roads were dead. It was so weird for NYC. A drunk driver rear-ended us going at what the cops estimated was 70 miles per hour and hit us repeatedly, bouncing us 100 yards down the road. There were no skid marks from him trying to brake. The car must have bunny hopped 3 or 4 times before it stopped. All the doors were jammed and only one window would roll down, so that's how we got out. It was totaled. The frame was twisted and trunk was literally compressed flush up to the rear window, but no broken windows. The police were surprised no one was seriously injured, because no one was hurt. I had a very mild back strain from twisting during the crash to look at the girls in back that woke up screaming. It cleared right up after a hot shower. I'll always be so very grateful to the nice Jewish couple that stopped and let us pile in their car to keep warm until the police came. They were so sweet, offering us water and matzo bread to help as the adrenaline wore off. We were so lucky. 1980s Honda Accords were tanks. I was 7 when my mother attempted to race a tornado because she didn't want to turn around and go back to her friend's house to seek shelter in the basement. We were literally like a block or 2 away from their house and had just said goodbye as the tornado warning for the county we had to drive into, and our current county, was issued, about a 10 to 15 minute drive. The weatherman on the radio was frantic, saying typical stuff like it's a very dangerous storm, get out of the car, do not try to outrun a tornado, get out of mobile homes and seek shelter in ditches, etc. My family is full of idiots. She called me names when I started crying because I was scared and had me lean out the window to look for the funnel, and, because I was out of other options, I did. The sky went green, we were the only car on the road. It started raining hard and I couldn't see shit. I thought about jumping out of the car and running back into the house or into a ditch, but she was driving too fast on the highway and wouldn't slow down. About 10 to 15 minutes later we did drive through where the tornado had touched down, trees and power lines were down, there was storm damage and hail/fog still on the road. We had narrowly missed it when it touched down and went back up minutes before we moved into the area. I pissed myself in terror that day, but I survived. Posted this elsewhere in the past, but I fell into a very, very cold creek when I was 12, wearing a winter coat and insulated boots, which get really heavy when wet, it turns out. The water was up to my neck before I started treading water. It took me 3 tries to find a branch that wasn't rotted so I could pull myself out. I very easily could have drowned or succumbed to hypothermia. And the only thing I could think was, my mom is going to be so pissed. I climbed up the bank, facing my aunt's house but on the wrong side of the creek, and clumsily went into the building behind me. I thought it was a rec center, but it turned out to be a fire station. They got me some dry sweats and called my mom's cell, which my aunt happened to have. She called my uncle, who is a drama king, and freaked out, screaming for my mother at the top of his lungs, which got her freaked out. Then they drove out of the subdivision to pick me up. When they arrived, they informed me that the firemen told my aunt they had rescued me from the creek. I was pissed. My 12-year-old ass had pulled myself out of the creek. Bastards, trying to steal my thunder. I still get made fun of for falling in. I was on a wildfire and walking behind the tractor plow to make sure it was cutting a good fire line. A tractor plow is just a bulldozer with a fire plow behind it and goes about 3 miles an hour at the max, so it wasn't hard to keep up with. Since bulldozers have a strange tendency to knock over trees, you need to stay a decent distance behind them. I have an aversion to tons of wood falling on my brain housing group. Usually we keep in contact on our radios and I could tell them if they needed to turn around and clean up the line. Unfortunately, my dumb ass neglected to check the batteries in my radio and it was dead as a doornail. We were in rather heavy vegetation and my only way out was back down the line we had just plowed. I felt a wind shift. This is a big deal when fighting forest fires since they tend to run in front of the wind, and looked around to see how the line was holding. I discovered that the fire had rather easily crossed the line, rendering all that walking irrelevant and also closing off the only way I had to get out of the area. Since my radio was dead, I had no way to contact the tractor operator, who was still happily plowing his useless fire line and knocking down trees willy-nilly. I decided my only course of action was to run up behind him and throw my shovel at the back window. Luckily that got his attention enough to look back and notice the fire roaring straight at us. He opened the door and I jumped in and we escaped from the fire at a graceful 3 miles an hour. Upon escape I was promptly, and correctly, called a dumbass by my boss. Frankly, I was just happy I didn't shit my pants. On my 3rd trip up Mount Baker, I took my friend who had never done any mountaineering before. I showed her the ropes, but she's this tiny 110-pound girl who isn't stopping me if I go into a crevasse. But whatever, it's the Coleman-Denming route on Mount Baker, nothing is going to go wrong. We summit in good time and on our way down we can see a direct line to the main high camp. We camped a bit higher to get some privacy, and some people working their way down to it. There's a fairly well-worn boot path too, so we head down that way instead of the way we came up. Big mistake. The path lead us straight into an icy crevasse field and the group ahead of us was moving so damn slowly. They were placing ice screws and were obviously beyond their comfort zone, so we have to wait for them standing on hard ice at a sharp angle above a rather large crevasse. And then my crampons slip and I'm falling for just a brief second before I dig my ice axe in and self-arrest. I played it off to the girl and people, but damn, had my axe not bit into the ice there I was dead and so was she. Moral of the story is, practice your self-arrest people and don't just follow a boot path. Riding my motorcycle on a rural road. Coming up on a semi-blind stop sign, T intersection, I was going straight with no stop. Even though I was watching the intersection, there's a lot of trees in the way, so I was watching closely. A fucking FedEx truck blows through the stop sign turning to his right. With a mix of emergency braking and dodging into the oncoming lane, I narrowly managed to avoid T-boning the truck at 80 km per hour. Stop signs exist for a reason, people. Had a car crash at 120 miles per hour and walked away with a fractured collarbone, pretty lucky I'd say. When the police came and spoke to me, they said they saw the car and were expecting to be cutting bodies out of the car. I was a passenger and the driver had a few bruises, but that was it. They also calculated that my friend was less than an inch from caving his head in on a pole sticking out of the back of the lorry we hit. Working as a merchant navy officer. Our vessel was about 60 nautical miles away from Somalia. Our way was through the Sea of Aden and into the Mediterranean from the Suez Canal. It was my shift at the time, 1,600 to 2,000 hours. It was a calm afternoon. As we approached the Sea of Aden, we were ambushed by two large boats from starboard, the right side of the ship. Around 20 Somali pirates, 10 and 10 on each boat, attacked us. Some of them had AK-47s and fires immediately at the bridge. We had armed mercenaries on board, so we were protected, but nevertheless, in danger. A stray bullet flew straight into the bridge. Even to this day, I can't even understand how that happened, and got me on my lower left leg. A burning sensation rushed through my body. I lost a lot of blood. Our armed security drove the pirates away with no casualties, and I got immediate health care from the captain and the second officer. I survived, and now I have a good story to tell. Laughing face. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. My "I survived" moment happened when I was 14. Playing around the pool, my friends and I were playing Marco Polo. I was out of the water trying to get away from being tagged by my friend. Fish out of water, he screams. I dove head first with my arms by my sides into the shallow 4.5 end of my pool. I awoke later that night in the hospital, not able to move anything, legs, arms, lungs, on a ventilator at that time, scared with no answers. 24 years later, I still don't know what I was thinking doing that. I'm now in a wheelchair with most of my mobility intact. I'm depressed at times about the incident, but I can say, I survived. One night, I had some friends over and we were having rum and cokes. Decided to have a little dance party. I was dancing near the plate glass coffee table and lost my balance. I was about to barrel through a medium thick plate of glass. I quickly realized what was happening and accepted, this is how I die, so I spread my arms and decided to swan dive through the glass instead of barrel through like some heathen. I think the shifting of my weight saved me, because I just safely landed on top of the glass. I survived. A few weeks later, the glass broke when a friend put his feet up on the table too forcefully. Was on vacation in Fiji for a college class. We were visiting a local village and had free time. I went snorkeling by myself. I am a landlubber and knew nothing of ocean safety and rip tides. I am swimming face down, looking at the colorful coral reefs. When I look up, I am like a mile out to sea, with no one else around. I try to swim straight back to shore, but the tide is too strong. I have to swim at a 45-degree angle to work my way back against the current. I also had to grab onto some corals and basically do horizontal rock climbing to work my way to shore. The corals are super sharp, and cut the shit out of my hands. I survived. When I was 9, I went to Ohio during the winter. I was visiting my grandparents and I'm from Florida, so I didn't really understand frozen lakes. My father took me to Lake Erie. I walked on the ice and fell in. After I managed to climb back up, I fell in again. This time I didn't make it back up and my dad went in to get me. I stopped breathing because I was under the water too long in the lake, and when he pulled me up he gave me CPR. I came back alive and he put me in the car and turned the heat on. All I had was a blanket. I was awake for maybe 3 to 4 minutes before I passed back out. Those 4 minutes seemed like an hour. I went into a coma and didn't come back out of the coma for 2 weeks. I was on life support. I remember waking up from the coma not knowing what happened. I thought I only fell asleep for a few minutes. A month ago, when a suicide bomber detonated himself 15 meters from where I was standing in Afghanistan. His vest didn't explode completely, so the 45 pounds of explosives didn't get set off, only the det cord. Attacks usually come in twos, so getting out of there was pretty frightening. Being in a situation where you almost died, are worried there might be another attack, and may have to shoot someone is rough. Especially when all three of those things happen in the span of a couple minutes. Edit: I just uploaded the video of EOD detonating the rest of the vest. Haven't shown this to anyone yet. I believe the video was taken standing about 100 yards away. I survived the tsunami in Thailand 2004. When I was in first grade, my jacket got caught in the van door and I was dragged half a block, ending with me getting run over. Ron, the mailman, alerted the driver. The other kids in the car tried to tell her, but since we were kind of jokers, she didn't believe them. It worked out. I didn't sustain any serious injuries and my parents were decent enough not to sue our neighbor as it was totally an accident. While tubbing with my cousins, I hooked my wrist into the handle as 6 kids piled on. The weight was too much and the tube went under, trapping me. I was underwater for a full minute, unable to free myself. My uncle had realized what happened and jumped off the boat to rescue me. Somehow an air bubble had formed around my mouth and I was able to breathe, thus surviving another day. When I was roofing houses one day, it started raining. I was clearing off the roof to stop for the day and slipped on a slippery spot and slid all the way down. My cat's paw on my tool belt hooked on a shingle right before I fell off. I was driving around with a buddy of mine. We approached a stop sign but dude wasn't slowing down. I don't like to be a backseat driver, so I wasn't going to say anything, but at the last minute I said, "Stop sign, dude." He jacked the brakes just as a car comes barreling past. That absolutely would have been the end of me. I'm pretty lucky. When I was around 3 to 4 years old, I was playing on the playground in a wooden area. I was alone, but our house was only 50 meters, 164 feet, away from it. While I was playing with myself, the neighbor let out his 2 German shepherds on the playground while I was there. That wouldn't have been a problem if the dogs was in leash, but they weren't and they started chasing me. I ran as fast as I could up in the playground tower and cried hysterical. The dogs tried to get up to me with help from the stairs, but without success. So I sat there crying and screaming, while the owner of the dogs just stood there and watched. I eventually managed to get down from the tower, while being chased by the dogs, and I ran as fast as I could home. My parents confronted the dog owner, but that fuck didn't even care. Skateboarding down an old beat-up street with heavy traffic en route to my work. I'm heading downhill and going about 25 to 30 miles per hour. I see a couple potholes about 15 feet down the road. I know if I time it right, I can lift the front of the board, and barely bump over the potholes. I try to slow down as I zoom into the potholes. I get ready, and lift the board. The pothole was deeper than it looked, and my board freezes, and I fly forward. I was riding down a path of about a foot in width of street, because no sidewalks and no bike lanes, sad face. When I hit the pavement, my face was facing towards traffic, and it all happened so slow. My head had landed about 10 inches from the passing tires. In 0.0 seconds flat I throw myself onto the grass, where my board had landed safely. I get up, walk for a minute, and continue on my day. Lucky, I guess. While stumbling and mumbling my way home from a night of drinking, on one of the premier Greek party islands I was thrown off of a 75-foot sheer cliff. I was apparently annoying these 2 muscle-headed dudes from California. One of them threw a roundhouse kick at my midsection. I somehow managed to block the kick, but it put me off balance. As I started to fall backwards, the other guy caught me under my arms. The guy who threw the kick immediately picked up my legs. One quick swing to the left and then the right, and I was falling head first off the cliff. Somehow I landed, about 15 feet down, upside down in a small tree sticking out of the side of the cliff, one of a few sticking out from the cliff, and not much more than a branch. If that tree wasn't in just the right place, I would have landed on jagged rocks 75 feet below. Without thinking, I instantly uprighted myself and scurried up the face of the cliff. Within 30 seconds of being thrown off of the cliff, I was standing back on the path completely sober, watching the two murderers running away. These two girls saw the whole thing happen and consoled me on my way home. No, I didn't get lucky. I think I had just used up a lifetime of luck surviving the fall.